there's a version of you that is exhausted. Not just tired, not just overworked, but exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix, in a way that weekends don't touch. You wake up already drained. You move through your days like you're wading through water. You show up for everyone around you. You say the right things, you post the right things, and then you come home and you feel hollow. And nobody around you knows that, do they? Because from the outside, you look fine. You look like you're managing. And maybe you are managing. But there is a difference between managing your life and actually living it. So today, I want to talk to you about something that nobody is going to tell you. Something that goes against almost everything this culture teaches you. You need to disappear for a while. Not forever, not dramatically, not in a way that scares anyone. But you need to step back, go quiet, and return to yourself before you lose yourself completely. Let's start with the honest question. How did you get here? Because nobody arrives at this level of depletion overnight. It's gradual. It's quiet. It sneaks up on you through 100 small decisions made over months or even years. You started saying yes when you meant no. You started performing emotions you didn't feel. Happiness at gatherings, enthusiasm in meetings, patience with people who kept taking from you without refilling you. You built a life that looked impressive on the outside and felt suffocating on the inside. Here's what psychology tells us about this. There's a concept called ego depletion, the idea that our mental and emotional resources are finite. Every decision you make, every conflict you manage, every emotion you suppress, every interaction where you're playing a role rather than being yourself, it costs you something. It draws from a reserve that has to be replenished. But modern life doesn't teach us how to replenish. It teaches us to push through, to hustle harder, to be grateful, to reframe, to keep going. And so instead of actually resting, we scroll. Instead of actually processing, we distract. Instead of actually recovering, we numb. There's also something called hypervigilance, a state where your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats. For some of you, this threat isn't physical, it's social. It's the anxiety of, what do people think of me? Did I say the wrong thing? Are they upset? Am I enough? Am I too much? When you live in that state, even quietly, even functionally, your body and mind are constantly at work. You are never truly off, and that is profoundly, biologically exhausting. The other thing I want to name is this. A lot of you have been performing yourselves for so long that you've genuinely lost track of who you are when no one is watching. That's not a character flaw. That's what happens when you've been shaped by other people's expectations for years. When your sense of self has been built around being needed, being liked, being good. At some point, you hollowed yourself out trying to be what everyone else needed. And now you're standing in the ruins of your own inner life, wondering why nothing feels meaningful. That is why you need to disappear. Now, I want to be very clear about what I mean when I say disappear, because your anxious brain might be catastrophizing right now. I am not telling you to quit your job tomorrow. I am not telling you to abandon your relationships. I am not telling you to go off the grid and live in the woods. Although, honestly, for some of you, a few days in the woods would do more for you than years of overthinking. What I mean is this: a deliberate, intentional withdrawal from the noise of social media, the noise of constant availability, the noise of other people's opinions and expectations and needs, the noise of your own compulsive productivity and busyness. Disappearing means creating enough silence and space that you can actually hear yourself again. Think about it this way. If you were in a room with 10 people all talking at once, you wouldn't be able to follow your own thoughts. You wouldn't even know what you think. And most of us are living in that room all day, every day. Your phone is 10 people talking at once. Your social calendar is 10 people talking at once. Your inner critic, your to-do list, your fear of missing out, 10 people talking at once. When you disappear, you leave that room. Not because the people in it don't matter, but because you can't hear yourself in there. Now, here's the psychological principle behind this. There's research on what's called the default mode network, a part of your brain that activates when you are not focused on external tasks, when you're daydreaming, reflecting, being still. This is the part of your brain that processes your experiences, consolidates your identity, generates genuine insight, and connects past and future selves. It is the part of your brain responsible for knowing who you are. And here's the problem. In an age of constant stimulation, we almost never activate it. We have trained ourselves to treat stillness as a problem to be solved. The moment we have nothing to do, we reach for the phone. The moment we have quiet, we turn on the noise. We have forgotten how to just be. And in doing so, we have starved the very part of our brain that makes us feel whole. Disappearing is how you feed it. It's how you return to yourself. And I know some of you are feeling resistance right now. You're thinking, but if I slow down, I'll fall behind. If I go quiet, people will forget me. If I stop performing, I'll lose everything I've built. I want you to sit with that fear for a second, because that fear, that is exactly the fear that has been running your life, and it is the fear you need to examine. Let's talk about that fear, because it's real and it's worth taking seriously. We live in a culture of visibility, where your presence, online, socially, professionally, is treated as currency, and stepping back feels like poverty. It feels like falling behind, becoming irrelevant, being replaced. But here's what I want you to consider. The version of you that everyone is watching right now, is that even you? Or is it a carefully curated, anxiously maintained performance of someone you thought you were supposed to be? Because if it's the latter, if you've been performing rather than being, then the thing you're afraid of losing isn't really you at all. It's a character you've been playing. And carrying a character that isn't you is the most tiring thing a human being can do. Psychologist Carl Rogers talked about the gap between the ideal self, the self we think we should be, and the real self, the self we actually are. And he said that the larger that gap, the greater our psychological distress. You are distressed not because your life is objectively bad. You are distressed because you are living so far from your actual self that you can barely recognize yourself anymore. And the only way to close that gap, the only way, is to stop performing long enough to figure out what you actually feel, want, believe, and need. That is what disappearing gives you. It gives you the raw material to rebuild yourself around something true. And as for being forgotten, the people who matter, the ones who are for you, not the version of you that serves them, those people are not going to forget you in a week of silence. They are going to notice that something changed when you came back, that you seemed calmer, more solid, more like yourself. The ones who only valued you for your constant availability, they were never really there for you anyway. And losing their attention is not a loss. It is a gift. So let's get practical. Because I know some of you are asking, okay, but what do I actually do? This is not a vacation. This is not passive rest, though rest is part of it. This is active, intentional recovery of self. Here's what that can look like. First, create physical silence. This means putting your phone in another room. It means not opening social media for a day,
then 2 days, then a week. It means not filling every silent moment with a podcast or a playlist or a show. I know that sounds small, but for many of you, the phone is the single greatest source of ego depletion in your life. The comparison, the performance, the reaction checking, the doom scrolling, it is draining you in ways you don't even register anymore because it's become so normal. Start there. Create silence. And when the silence feels uncomfortable, because it will, don't run from it. Get curious about it. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding feeling right now?
Second, let your mind wander on purpose. Go for a walk without a destination and without your earbuds. Sit outside and look at something natural. Take a long shower and actually think during it instead of rehearsing conversations. This is how you reactivate that default mode network. This is how insight starts to come back. Some of the most important realizations of your life will arrive not when you're grinding, but when you're staring out a window doing nothing. Third, write. Not journaling in the way you think you're supposed to do it. Not performance journaling, not bullet points about productivity. Just write the truth, unfiltered. What is actually happening in you right now? What are you tired of? What are you pretending is fine? What do you want that you've been too afraid to admit? Write it down. Not for anyone else, just for you. There is something profoundly therapeutic about externalizing the inner world, about taking the swirling fog inside your head and giving it shape on a page. It is one of the most powerful tools of self-recovery we have. Fourth, audit your relationships. In your silence, without the noise of social obligation, start to notice which people in your life energize you and which ones drain you. Which relationships are mutual and which ones are you simply serving? You don't have to cut anyone off dramatically, but you do need to get honest with yourself about where your energy is going and whether it's going toward people and things that are actually giving something back. Fifth, reconnect with what you actually like. This sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but it's profound. What do you enjoy? Not what makes you look interesting, not what impresses people, not what's productive or useful. What do you enjoy for the sheer experience of it? Because a lot of you have been so other-focused for so long that you genuinely can't answer that question. And that absence, that not knowing what you like, what you want, what brings you alive, that is the root of a quiet, gnawing kind of emptiness. Find one thing you used to love and do it with zero agenda. Not to share it, not to become good at it, just to have it for yourself. I want to tell you something about the other side of this. Because here's what happens when you actually do this work. When you actually step back, go quiet, and give yourself the space and the silence and the honesty that you've been starving yourself of. You stop reacting and start responding. You start knowing what you want and being able to say it. You stop needing constant validation because you've rebuilt enough of an internal foundation that you can validate yourself. You become harder to manipulate, harder to guilt trip, harder to exhaust, because you finally know where your limits are and you respect them. You become, in a word, solid. Not cold, not distant, not selfish. Solid, grounded, genuinely present, because you're not constantly performing, not constantly monitoring, not constantly depleted. And here's the paradox that I love most about this. The more you disappear, the more you step back from the performance, the noise, the approval seeking, the more genuinely you show up for the people you love. Because when you're running on empty,
everything you give feels like a sacrifice. Everything feels like a cost. And people around you can sense that, even if they can't name it. They can sense the resentment under the helpfulness, the exhaustion under the smile. But when you are genuinely replenished, when you show up from a place of overflow rather than depletion, your presence becomes a gift instead of a transaction. That is what disappearing does for your relationships. That is what it does for your life. So let me leave you with this. You have been so available to everyone else that you have been unavailable to yourself for a very long time. And I know the world is not going to tell you to stop. The world is going to keep demanding, the notifications will keep coming, the people in your life will keep needing things, the pressure to perform, to produce, to be visible and present and on, it's not going anywhere. But you get to choose something different.